Let me tell you the story of the 22 caliber killer and the Midtown Slasher. One man, both a serial and spree killer that rampaged through the streets of New York and Georgia, murdering black men and boys, with the exception of one Hispanic man. Hey, it's Genevia and welcome to Mystery Digest, where every Sunday I cover true crime cases, paranormal cases, and other mystery-related content. Today we're looking into the killings of the 22 caliber killer and the Midtown Slasher, Joseph Christopher, a 25-year-old serial and spree killer that went through the streets of New York and Georgia committing racially motivated murders. We'll be taking a glimpse into his early life, his struggle with schizophrenia, and the timeline of his murders as the 22 caliber killer and the Midtown Slasher. Joseph was born into a family of 6. He had 2 older sisters and 1 younger. His mother, Therese, was a registered nurse, and his father, Nicholas, was a maintenance worker. Joseph and his father had a pretty good relationship. Nicholas was an outdoorsman and a hunter, and taught Joseph how to handle an array of weapons, including guns, from an early age. This is where he developed his interest in guns. In 1971, Joseph was enrolled in Burgard Vocational High School before dropping out a few years later in 1974. He was remembered as a quiet and unassuming student who was very intelligent despite not being book smart. After dropping out, he worked a series of odd jobs and even started a small home improvement business with a close friend. However, this business wasn't successful. Around this time, he tried to enlist in the army, but he apparently had hernia, so they didn't accept him. In late 1977, he started working at Canisius College as a maintenance worker. And during his time there, he met and fell in love with a gun club instructor and went on to get his gun permit shortly after. After this relationship ended, he reportedly started acting weird, as if something was troubling him. And after a few incidents at work, he was laid off for sleeping on the job. After getting fired from his job, he went back to live with his parents. He started drinking, got his gun permit suspended, and reported his gun as stolen. After 2 years of noticing that his mental health was slipping, Joseph made a visit to the Buffalo Psychiatric Center in September 1980, where he went to seek assistance. But he was told that he wasn't a threat to his own or anyone else's safety, so they recommended counseling therapy instead. It was a bad idea. Just 14 days after he left the center, the murders began as the 22 caliber killer. Now, it's important to know that most people with schizophrenia are not violent, nor do they display any dangerous behavior. However, a small amount do become violent because of the acute symptoms of psychosis, especially if they're not medicated, and in this case, Joseph was not. From September 22nd, in the span of just 2 days, 4 black males were shot and killed. The victims' age ranged from 14 to 43. Eyewitnesses described the killer as a white youth. The killing started with 14-year-old Glenn Dunn, who was shot and killed outside a supermarket in Buffalo. The following day, 32-year-old Harold Green was shot and killed while eating at a fast food restaurant nearby. That same night, 30-year-old Emmanuel Thomas was shot and killed while crossing the street to his home. And in the morning, Joseph McCoy's dead body was discovered near the Niagara Falls. After linking all 4 murders to the same gun, the media dubbed the killer the 22 caliber killer. There were high racial tensions in Buffalo at the time. Black people were complaining about the lack of police support and protection from all the lynchings that were going on. Random killings of innocent black people were running rampant in the streets of Buffalo, and the murders of the 22 caliber killer only contributed to this frustration. On October 8 in suburban Amherst, 71-year-old taxi driver Parler Edward was found beaten to death in the trunk of his car with his heart removed. And the day following that, another taxi driver, 40-year-old Ernest Jones, suffered the same fate. The day following the last cab killing, Colin Cole, a hospitalized man, was almost strangled to death by a man fitting the description of the 22 caliber killer. Before attacking Colin, he made a racist remark about hating black people. Colin suffered severe damage to his throat following the incident. The FBI became involved in the case shortly after. The killings moved to Manhattan with the Midtown Slasher murder starting on December 2nd. Joseph's MO changed. He decided to stop using his gun. This resulted in the birth of another serial killer alias being created, the Midtown Slasher. We'll get into the theory of why he changed his MO shortly, but now let's look into the murders. On December 2nd, 6 men were attacked, 5 black men and 1 Hispanic. And all of this was within the span of 13 hours. Unfortunately, only 2 survived. The stabbing started with 25-year-old John Adams, who narrowly escaped death by a white assailant around 11:30 a.m. 2 hours later, 32-year-old Ivan Fraser was attacked on the street but managed to get away with only minor injuries. The victims following his attack weren't as lucky. At 3:30, 19-year-old Louis Rodriguez was attacked and murdered in what the police called an apparent holdup. At around 6:50, 30-year-old Anton Davis was stabbed to death. And 4 hours following that, 20-year-old Richard Renner was also stabbed and killed. The last victim, John Doe, was found just before midnight near Madison Square Garden. Why did he kill the Hispanic young man, though? He's not black. Maybe he saw the color in his skin and thought, dark enough, right? While the authorities were looking for the Midtown Slasher, the murders moved back to Buffalo, where 31-year-old Roger Adams was stabbed to death on December 29th. The stabbing of 26-year-old Wendell Barnes followed the day after in Rochester. And the day after that, Albert Menifee survived an attack in Buffalo, despite getting a stab to his chest that nicked his heart. On New Year's Day, 2 more black men were attacked, but luckily both survived. These men are Larry Little and Calvin Crippen. On January 6th, the police announced that the .22 caliber killings and the Midtown Slasher killings were probably linked, though they weren't any closer to a suspect. I mean, they did technically say the man was street smart. You know, if you're on the road, and I just saw you go. Profile of the Midtown Slasher and the .22 caliber killer. Both these cases were profiled by FBI profiler John Douglas. The .22 caliber killer was profiled as a mission-oriented asocial loner with an assassin personality who had in the past joined hate groups or even groups with positive goals or values such as a church. This person would now be convinced that he is contributing to the cause. The killer would have a gun fetish or military background but would have been discharged due to psychological issues or failure to adjust to military life. He was profiled as a rational and organized individual with a logical, although delusional, system of beliefs. While unsure that the .22 caliber killer and the Midtown Slasher were the same person, Douglas was nonetheless convinced that they were committed by the same type of person, a racist who killed in a blitz assassin style. As for the theory as to why Joseph changed his MO, it's speculated that he decided not to use his gun anymore as to not draw attention to himself in busy areas such as Manhattan. The case finally broke in January 18, 1981, when Christopher was arrested for attacking a black soldier in Fort Benning. He later attempted suicide and revealed during a psychiatric session that he had to kill the blacks. This prompted the police to search his former residence in Buffalo, where they found incriminating evidence. Among the things that they found were .22 caliber ammunition, a gun barrel, and a sawed-off Ruger 1022 rifle. In April 1981, he was indicted on charges of committing the .22 caliber shootings, plus the stabbings that occurred in Buffalo through December 29 to January 1. In New York City, he was also indicted on 2 of the knife attacks attributed to the Midtown Slasher. On May 8, he was brought back to Buffalo for his trial. He pleaded not guilty to the 3 murders, while also refusing legal counsel and representing himself. At the end of the trial, he was sentenced to 60 years in prison. However, this ruling was overturned because the judge barred the defense from presenting expert opinion on whether or not Joseph could stand trial. He was later found competent to stand trial and was then tried and sentenced to life behind bars. After spending a couple years in prison, Joseph died of a rare form of male breast cancer on March 1, 1993. He was 37 years old. So what do you guys think about this case? What do you guys think about Joseph? Do you think he should have gotten the time he got behind bars? Do you think that if he got the help that he needed, any of these murders would occur? Or do you think racism is a main part of why he did what he did? Here endeth a portion of my unholy word. We end it by saying, don't murder people. Especially if it's racially motivated, because that makes you a jerk.